The stage is set. The bright lights are on. Welcome along to Obviously Fight Talk episode 80. And I am joined, as always, by Mr. Robert Palin.
How's it going, man?
Not too bad, good. Robert. And
good.
I'm Noel O'Keefe. You know that by now if you're listening. If you're not, I'm Noel O'Keefe. Big show this week, but before we give you our lineup, we're going to give you a shout out to our sponsors as always. Fight Store Ireland, the fighter's choice, everything you need under two roofs. Check them out. They're in KRC, that place, and they're in Paddy Houlihan's gym as well out in Tallaght. Dublin 24. MMA Mix, they're obviously good because they're with obviously Fight Talk. They have a different approach to everything. Check out the website, have a look at everything they do. Yes, there's good stuff on MMA Mix, there always is. And feelsupreme.co.uk. Receive 10% off all products from the Feel Supreme website using air code Fight Talk at the checkout. Visit www.feelsupreme.co.uk for CBD oil and many organic and natural supplement and whole foods. We're going guest heavy this week. You can nearly say that every week, but delighted to say we have a couple of guests that we were looking to get on for a while. Yes, he's been bugging me at every show I go up north to. You might recognise him from the Bama Cage. You might have seen him on ACB. You might be old school. You might have seen him fight. We're going to be joined by Decky Larkin later on, referee, former pro fighter. So we'll be having a good chat about Decky, his career, and where he got to. We'll be joined. We're not saying he's the best. We're just saying there's nobody better. Brendan Dorman will be on, as he is each week, chatting away to us. And we are then joined by a personal favourite, I think, for Rob to get this one. Is Chuck Mindenhall, who is known from MMAFighting.com and The Ringer. So we're delighted to be joined by Chuck as well. But yeah, it's a busy show. It's a packed show. Last week's show, shout out to last week's show. Big George Foreman.
Big show.
The show went everywhere.
It did.
Everywhere.
Let's try beat it. Share this right now.
Yeah.
Let's beat that one.
So if you are watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, hit the button below, and join the smart people who've already done this, and share the show on Facebook and Twitter or whatever your preferred social media.
It's MySpace.
Because it gets the word out there. It makes us big. But it was a big week for OFT last week.
It wasn't
the Mac Life, MMA Fighting, Sky Sports.
Above all, it was just an honour to speak to the
Big
man.
George.
That is Big George.
I cooked me steak during the week in honour to the man.
Did you?
On me farm and grill.
It was like a ritual, standing over everything, just like, yes.
Yeah, welcome. But let's delve into our first guest and welcome along to obviously Fight Talk, MMA Fighting and The Ringer, Chuck Mindenhall. This will be fun. So welcome back to obviously Fight Talk, and for the people watching on YouTube you can see, and for the people listening on audio you're about to find out, we are now joined by MMAFighting.com and The Ringer, Chuck Mindenhall. So Chuck, thanks a million for coming on and speaking to us here on obviously Fight Talk.
Hey, what's up fellas? Thanks for having me.
I just want to get your opinion firstly, Chuck, on what did you make of the Demetrious Johnson and the Ray Borg, the fallout? Did in a way, did it lessen the card in some ways, and your overall thoughts on Borg pulling out, considering his teammate Donald Cowboy Cerrone has gone ahead and said he should have fought anyway? So just what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, you can always count on Donald Cerrone for an honest answer when it comes to that sort of thing. Well, we know that he would have fought. This is one of those weird situations, man. I feel like in some ways, Demetrious Johnson, the focus was on his negativity a little bit, like kind of where he was with UFC and stuff, that Ray Borg kind of slid into that card without us talking about, you know, the fact that he's pulled out of other fights and had some problems with weight cutting and things like that. So it was like, as it happened, the initial thing was like, not again. I can't believe that we're going to go through another kind of last-minute shakeup on a major card. And then you start thinking about it and thinking, wow, man, it was a risk for the UFC to book Ray Borg, you know, in some ways. It was, especially given all the Dillashaw fallout when we were talking about maybe booking DJ with Dillashaw and him missing weight and him, you know, kind of all the strange things that he might bring to the table. To wind up in a situation where it's actually Ray Borg that falls out of it, it was surprising, but as it sunk in, I was like, well, this isn't surprising. This seems very par for the course. As far as the card, I thought it did hurt the card. I felt like it was one of those Jenga puzzles, you know. It was built up very nicely. If it was all in place, it was going to look very solid, but you take that one piece out and it kind of crumbles a little bit. That's kind of how I saw it. You know, just given that we had already had Amanda Nunes lined up to fight Shevchenko, I didn't think that particularly was going to sell by itself. And, the fight ended up being pretty good, but it wasn't the big lure fight that it kind of was like a package deal. You got both of those title fights in there. So I thought it was a big blow to the card that quick to it. They're just lucky it happened in Edmonton, where people are going to show up no matter what. Yeah. And it'll still look good, at least for the live audience, at least. Yeah.
One thing that you brought up in your most recent article, I believe it was that, or was actually the one for the Ringer, was the pre-fight one, where you said that only in 2017 in the UFC the main events fall out like the day before, which is interesting. But what do you put that down to? Do you think it's just bad luck, or do you think it's something else?
I think it's probably both. I mean, as we raise scrutiny and more, the fighters themselves have become very aware in the Conor McGregor era of their standing, what they should be fighting for, the bigger picture, these types of things. I think that they, if they're not feeling 100% going into a fight, that is a red flag. That's going to be the first one. The weight cutting issues, they've been ongoing. I think people are a little more reluctant probably to put themselves into serious jeopardy trying to get down to that weight, which we used to see people really go to the extremes to get there. And I feel like we're seeing that tide turn just a little bit. And part of it is probably just some bad luck. I mean, the Amanda Nunes one that happened, it's so bizarre. You think sinuses, and you think you could see it both ways. You could see how the UFC is like, we spent millions of dollars putting this fight together. You're falling out last second for a sinus issue, and you could see from the UFC standpoint, like, nobody falls out from a fight like that. It's got to be something. It's got to be a broken bone or something like that. But I think that when you really look at it, Amanda Nunes as the champion, for instance, stands to make 7 figures through the course of a year or something like that, versus losing one fight and falling back into a pay scale that's like maybe a tenth of that or even less, like 1/15 of that pay scale. So you can see why they don't want to, you could see both sides of it, but I think that it's the fighter consciousness coming together with all the different elements in play that make some people reluctant to go through with the fight just because they're booked at that time. And then you have some bad luck, and then you got USADA, and you got all these other elements to it. And I think that it's just a weird confluence of events at this point in time that's making all these things fall out.
How do you see it playing out? Do you think Demetrious and Borg will be matched up again? I know Borg said that, or Demetrious said that he wants to fight Borg at 216, which is in October. Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think maybe they'll move on to somebody else?
It's a risk, man. When it first happened, I was like, they're just pushing it back one card, which sucks for a lot of reasons. But at the same time, you think, at least it's going to play out sooner rather than later. It won't be drug out. But then you think about it and you think, now, does the UFC really risk this again? I feel like the UFC kind of caved into Demetrious Johnson's what he was looking for this fight. The only reason Ray Borg is there is because they basically, in the end, went with Demetrious's whom he wanted to fight, and you get this sort of result. It'd be interesting to see. I think this is one of those strange situations where we see this all the time. A guy like Borg gets to this spot and then loses his footing, and he maybe never gets back there again.
Yeah.
So you just don't know. I think that if I'm the UFC, I'm very, very cautious to rebook that fight unless I feel close to 100% that Ray Borg's going to be there on fight night. You know what I mean? Because you can't just – something that people aren't pining for like that, I don't think you can keep putting it back together. You're going to get diminishing returns on a product that was never that exciting to begin with.
Ironically, in this, Dana White had been quoted as saying Amanda Nunes will never headline another UFC card. And she headlines a UFC card.
And he wasn't there.
So the fight has got people, as always, when the outcome is announced and Bruce Buffer announces winner by split decision, social media goes into meltdown of robbery and that type. I actually loved your tweet where you said I scored a robbery on either side. But what did you think of the fight? Some people were calling boring. Some people were calling was a masterclass, tactical masterclass. What was your opinions, and did the judges get it right in your opinion?
Man, so I mean, it's kind of both. It was kind of boring. If you look at it from a certain way, you're like, well, it wasn't the most exciting fight. But then again, it was tactical. You could see what both of them were doing. There was a lot of caution early, a big feel-out process there. And, you're watching Shevchenko, and she's she's doing well what she does, which is she was countering a lot of big shots. She was landing in there. Maybe she was not pulling the trigger as often as I thought she might. Sometimes you think as a challenger you want to see them kind of sell out, especially when the fight, people were speculating that she wanted to get the fight into the championship rounds, or that just to see if Amanda Nunes might start to go downhill, lose some cardio, things like that. But I never really saw her turn it on. She had some moments, but I never saw her turn it on like I kind of anticipated she would. So there was a little bit of disappointment, I think, from that side of it. Amanda Nunes, from her side of it, you're like, she upheld her own. She conserved her energy. I think that was the big knock. And what will happen if she has to fight in the 5th round and beyond? She did what she needed to do. Honestly, they could have had a split decision either way, and I would have been like, it was the same to me. And it was, those rounds were so hard to score that in the end I was like, there was really no robbery. I was just basically kind of pointing out like, this is one of those fights nobody's going to be happy with because there's no definitive winner. So that to me, it was like, if you look at the old fight credo, or whatever you want to call it, the champion, if you're going to beat the champion, you better do it emphatically. I guess you could apply it to something like this. Shevchenko, she might have been very mad at the end, but she just didn't do enough to make anything definitive. And so it's hard to see her side of it as anything like to basically be as mad as she was during that thing, because I just didn't think she did enough in the end.
I think that's everyone's thoughts, and the tactics that Shevchenko would adopt is that she'd go in there, wait to the later rounds, and pick Nunes apart. But as one person who always says, Robin Black always says it in a lot of his breakdowns, where he says, if we know that, the Nunes camp knows that too, so they're going to address that. And you could see it. She was very tactical. She wasn't going like Amanda Nunes is known for coming out and raining fire in the first round, but she didn't do that. She was more of a tactical fight.
No grappling either. There was a lot of grappling in the first one as well. And
I think DC, said it in the commentary where he said, if you're looking to burn them out, you got to walk into the fire in an exchange, and that was something that Shevchenko probably didn't do. And I sort of agree with it, with what you were saying as well, Chuck, and Rob, you said it too to me before we started as well, is that if Shevchenko was called the winner, you wouldn't have cried out raw either.
No. To be honest, for me, I said it after the fight, I thought the scorecards would look a lot messier than they did. When I was scoring it, I was looking back and I was saying, what did I even score that last round? Who do I give it to? And I was expecting the scorecards to be all over the place, and they weren't really. It was a split decision. I didn't actually see how each judge gave each round, but I thought they would have been completely all over the place. So, what can you do?
The weird one is that Joe Rogan in the cage asked Shevchenko, is she going to get it next? Now, that normally doesn't happen when you've lost twice to an opponent, that it's the automatic rematch. A lot of people are calling for her to drop down a weight class as well. But what do we think is next for Valentina Shevchenko? Is there something there straight away, and is there a good challenger for Amanda Nunes?
I mean, certainly they could back pocket that fight. I think that you could have that fight set up again and at some point. I'm a big fan of, if there's been two chances and the champion is 2-0, and I just don't see the need for it. We've seen that sort of scenario in other series. Obviously, the latest one being Daniel Cormier and John Jones, and people were talking about that. And you're like, I don't really see a path for Cormier back to John Jones at this point, until, of course, John Jones gets in his own way and starts making things interesting again.
Classic John Jones.
But for her, I mean, for Shevchenko, the good thing is the division isn't, it's not teeming with contenders. There is a chance she could get back. She has given Amanda Nunes so far two pretty good fights. I mean, and very close fights. And I feel like that counts for something. It just sort of depends now. The new weight class, if Shevchenko wants to go down and challenge, maybe, that people are talking about Jędrzejczyk moving up at some point, and then that clash would be big because they have some history and things like that. It just kind of depends, man, like how this will work. But I don't see an easy path for her back right away, at least. Not with the division has to keep moving a little bit. And to me, if it's 2-0 Amanda Nunes and she's the champ and all that, it doesn't make sense right off the bat.
I think I know your answer to this, but she did say she's going to appeal the decision. Do you think that's a complete waste of time?
Yes, of course. I mean, any time that these things, like we just talked about, if there was something definitive or a foul or anything, I mean, if you could just point to anything and say, like, here's where it went wrong, maybe. But even then, she wouldn't win it. So the bottom line is, I don't really know, what is she appealing?
bad. Yeah.
I think just about everybody had it as a coin flip in the end. So you're just appealing that it landed heads rather than tails at this point.
I had said pre-fight that the UFC bigwigs would be sitting hoping almost for a Shevchenko win because it would set up the rubber match and they could really play it. But as we all know, the MMA gods don't listen. Co-main event of the evening for me was Performance of the Night. Rafael dos Anjos put on an absolute clinic against Neil Magny and went through him like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. I was expecting a lot harder fight for RDA, and in a way I was saying this will show where he stands in the welterweight division, because no disrespect to Neil Magny, but the guys above him are a lot bigger and thicker bodied guys, so it'll be interesting to see how RDA does, and boy did he pass the test with an A+.
Oh yeah, he did, and I honestly this was the big intrigue fight in a lot of ways for me, just given that Neil Magny is just, I mean, he's had the times he loses, I feel like it's one of those things like, wow, he really got beat. But in those 13 fights since 2014, he's won 11 of them.
Yeah.
And he's coming off of a couple of the guys he's beat recently are really good fighters. So I was really interested to see. It's almost like we've never contemplated this fight. Having RDA up a weight class and Neil Magny on his trajectory, it's just one of those ones you never really thought about until it was happening. And there was a lot of questions as to Rafael dos Anjos in terms of how he was going to look in his second fight. Obviously, he looked pretty good in his first fight at 170. And then, of course, that 10-inch reach advantage, which I thought was going to play a significant role in all of that. And it ended up not being that big of a deal. Honestly, man, for him, and maybe you want to talk about Henry Cejudo in a minute, but for both of those guys, I felt like what emphatic statements both of those guys made on a night when it felt like it needed something like that. There had to be some kind of subplot going on, like the reemergence of these two guys that you kind of just stop thinking about after they lose their title or their title shot or whatever. You just don't really think about them that much anymore. And both of those guys came through, looked very, very, very good and ready to contend again in their divisions. But I was especially impressed with RDA, man. Like, that's just when he's on like that. When he's just, I said in the piece, I mean, it's like a demon. He's just like been wound up, and he just goes in there, and it's just pace, and just laying it on people. And man, I didn't anticipate the fight going like that, to be honest. But what a great showing for him. Honestly, that was great stuff.
How close do you think he is to a title shot? Because I know on commentary, and I think it was reported that he was like almost a backup if Woodley's last opponent Moya fell out. So they must be considering him close to a title shot. And if you look at the rankings, Neil Magny was 6. You have Donald Cerrone, Carlos Conde, Jorge Masvidal, Moya, Lawler and Thompson above him, possibly, depending on how they rank them. But we know that the rankings are great. But there's really, realistically, not too many guys ahead of him. So how close is he to a title shot?
He might be closer than we realize, man. I mean, we see this all the time. That division has a lot of asterisks, and Carlos Conde, who knows what's going on with him. Stephen Thompson was already up there. Masvidal, like these guys, none of them are clear cut guys for that role. And I feel like kind of being 2-0 and looking really good on that outing will certainly help him. You never know, man. Like these types of things, all it takes is one fight to fall out or one whatever, and he's right there. So I think he put himself into a good position. Logic would say that he probably still needs to get by one more guy, like probably a top 5 type guy that would put him right into that space. And then there's the problem he had when he was the lightweight champion, which is he's not exactly, like you guys. You know how Conor McGregor is and these things. Like I feel like the new ownership, they like a more flamboyant or charismatic personality. I don't think they're really getting that with RDA, and that could hurt him. I really believe that those things matter in 2017. They want to know that you are going to bring fans to the table if you're holding that belt, and people are going to be intrigued. And I'm not sure right now RDA would be that guy. I don't think he'll ever be that guy in terms of his charisma, but certainly, if he has one more showing like that against a top 5 guy, I'd put him right up there.
Talking about people coming back and starting to relaunch, as in they may have been forgotten. God bless him, he's never ever going to get rid of the name. But who the fuck is that guy? Jeremy Stevens, Gilbert Melendez. That is a big win for Stevens. Yes, you can argue that Melendez was his first time down at featherweight, but Jeremy Stevens looked great in this fight.
Yeah. again, a fight. See, that was what was fun about the card. I felt like these fights were a little bit hard to predict. And honestly, man, like the Vegas had them all wrong. Like all the underdogs were winning, and it was in that way it was a lot of fun. I didn't feel like there was anything that was like, oh, of course that happened. That's going to happen. Jeremy Stephens, man. I mean, I think most people think about his hands. Like stay out of the way of his punch. You're going to be okay. But the way he was chopping down that leg. Actually, I wrote a column about that this morning for MMA Fighting. Was pretty impressive, and it was, to see him kind of emerge, because what was this, his 26th fight, like 26th UFC fight. It's always interesting to see a guy who gets this very late renaissance, and I feel like that's kind of where Jeremy Stephens is. Obviously, this is a very big win for him, and now he's talking about Jose Aldo and all this stuff, and I'm like, what a weird story that would be for a guy getting near his 30th fight to finally break through and become a contender in the division. But he looked great in the fight. I thought Gilbert Melendez showed a lot of heart, man. I mean, because you could see him just wobbling on that leg, and it was wince-worthy from the first moments you knew he was hurt. You're just wincing looking at that leg, and as the fight kept going, you're just every time it gets slammed, you're like, oh man, this is crazy. I was a little surprised Stephens didn't attack it even more in that second round. He did go after it a little bit, but it was almost like he was trying to play up top a little bit, trying to get him with his fists anyway. But man. Great showing for Jeremy Stephens, and you got to hand it to a guy like that. There are certain guys, they just diminish over time. It's just inevitable. Diego Sanchez, it's amazing he's still around, but of course nobody thinks he's the Diego Sanchez in his prime back when, back coming off a tough or, the first couple years after that. But here's a guy who literally just keeps adding scalps to his collection, man, every time we kind of put him away. So big time hats off to Jeremy Stephens, man, and it'd be interesting to see. I would be interested in seeing him fight Jose Aldo now. I mean, to me, that fight would make some sense, especially given that the leg kicks would be coming at him the next time. You know what I mean?
Well, Jose was saying he wants somebody. There's nobody out there, so I think in a weird way as well. I know I referred to it, but the whole call out of Conor doing that with the that almost in a way negatively, yes, and a meme everywhere, or a meme or mimi, whatever you want to call it.
Meme.
That almost put Jeremy Stephens out there for the people like the casual fans, we'll call them here, who weren't aware of him. So now when they see him on the card, they go, oh, here's this guy.
Yeah.
And then he puts on a performance like that. So it's almost broaden an audience. Yes, it might be to just put out a tweet to your friend or something when he's on, but it's brought a new audience and a new set of eyes on him, and that's not a bad thing when you put performances on like that.
No, 100% you're right. And the column that I was talking about, I let off basically with Conor McGregor mentioning that as part of a piece that had nothing to do with him, nothing to do with Conor McGregor, nothing to do with that incident. But at the same time, I even thought at the time, I was like, it seems silly. It seemed like, oh, who the fuck is this guy? And, he's just setting fire to this guy who's been around for a long time. But in the long run, I think that did bring him a ton of publicity. I remember I was trying to just talk to Jeremy Stephens about it. I was like, hey, I wanted to know, did he think that was a score? Was that a win? Is it good publicity just to have done that? And he was very, very reluctant to talk to us. So I feel like, I think some guys, and I don't want to, let's word this carefully, I think some guys like that, they don't realize when they do something good. They think that, you know what I mean? They just, it's kind of an oblivious falling forward. And I think that's kind of what happened for him in that.
What about for Melendez? I know in your article today, I read it, and I do urge people to go check it out. It's really good. But what do you think happens with Melendez next? You did kind of touch on a possible retirement, maybe. That's 4 fights now of a loss. That's not Melendez's situation. He doesn't usually do that. So where do you see Melendez go from here?
Man, it's so weird because you look at his resume, the win, especially so he hasn't won since 2013. Diego Sanchez is now 1-5 in the UFC and 0-1 in the featherweights. And you think that's not very what do you do with a guy like that at this point? It seems like the writing is on the wall for him. But at the same time, he was fighting guys who were former champions and world beaters, and you think, it's kind of unfair at 35 to be like, well, he should be beating all these guys. I don't really know, man. He's never been, since coming over to the UFC, I think there was a big attraction because he had won a handful of fights in a row. He defended his Strikeforce title a bunch. He was coming over. That partition came down, and you thought, man, imagine Gilbert Melendez fighting some of these top-notch lightweights in the UFC. Well, we got that. We got to see some of that, and he has not been on the winning end of those. A couple of the fights have been fun, but they've just not been on the winning end. And I think his his star has diminished considerably. I feel like even on this one, it was very below the radar that he was even on the fight card. I didn't feel like people were pining to see him fight. Nothing like that. So it was more of just an addition for value to the pay-per-view in the end, type thing. And I don't know. I could see a scenario where the UFC doesn't. I don't know what his contract is like, but it'd be tough for me to. I don't know. The UFC, he's just the kind of guy the UFC may not want to keep around just because of his price tag and all that stuff. And then he winds up. I could see a scenario where he winds up back with Scott Coker, maybe fighting in Bellator or something like that. I think it'd be tough. He may get one more crack in the UFC, but I think it's 4 losses in a row. Yeah, and I'm not sure what you do with him. You got guys like Rashad Evans. Who just, he was in that fight recently with Sam Alvey, and you're just like, at this point, you just kind of want to see him retire. I don't really quite feel that with Melendez. I feel like he is still there. He's still got something, and probably there's a mental thing going on too, and I feel like he needs to get over that. But I think he'll probably hang around, but who knows if it would be in the UFC. I could for sure see him though reunited with Scott Coker if he continues.
Yeah, I'm with you there because I'm pretty sure I read that Melendez was one of the highest paid guys on that card.
Yeah, the whole thing. So that's why I think that the UFC. What do you do with him? I think at some point the UFC might just cut ties with him. Yeah,
especially WME, IMG. You have to remember, they're there now. It's not the old guys who knew who Gilbert Melendez was. This is people saying we're paying him a lot of money for losing. So
that's a good point.
Yeah,
something as well that you just pointed out about fighters going on too much. On last week's MMA Air with your colleague Ariel, Ben Askren was on, and he spoke about I'm going out in my prime. That's when I want to go out, and he sort of said his body doesn't allow him to do things that done a couple of years back. He's a little more technical now, so he has that advantage, but he wants to go out. He doesn't want to stay in there too long. He's a perfect record of 17-0. He's going to have one more fight and that's it, done. And he said the only thing that would take him out of retirement is a fight against the number one guy, and if the number one guy's name is Woodley, he's not interested because it's his good friend. But is that something that you'd like to see fighters have more? Is almost known when, why do we almost have to wait? For me, I'm not too sure, Chuck, who you. It's your namesake. Chuck Liddell was my absolute hero in MMA. And when you start seeing him getting put out by Rashad and then Rich Franklin, it almost you're there going, please retire. You don't. When do the fighters need even? I don't know if it's a mind coach or a sports coach or even somebody in the promotion having a chat about them with retirement. Maybe it is time to go. You're starting to go on a slide. Or is it just money related? It's a long-winded question I'm asking, but what is your opinion on fighters hanging around too long?
No easy answer either, man. And we've seen this in every version. Unfortunately, one of the sad truths about fighting is at the twilight, man, it has to kind of be beat into these guys that it's over. And a lot of them just don't know that it's over. Melvin Guillard, for instance, he's been hanging on in more of the regional scene, doing these lower promotions and still losing. And you wonder what's going on. What are you doing? Why are you still hanging around? BJ Penn, another great example of you just see him diminishing returns every time. You want to believe because there was such a glorious moment in their career where they were invincible. They had that connection. People were just in tune to that thing, like Chuck Liddell and all that. I don't know, man. Ben Askren was always a little different because it was, he was never going to bend over or do anything crazy to be part of the UFC. He was never going to, try to fit in with what Dana White's version of things were. He spoke his voice from the very beginning. To me, I feel like I think he brought on a whole different idea for some fighters to follow and say, look, this guy navigated his career a very specific way. It had very specific goals. It had nothing to do with what we consider the common goals. Even though he ended up being a champion in the organizations he wasn't pining like we were to go put himself on trial against the best in the UFC because his career, that's what his career goals were just different. I visited him in Milwaukee a couple of years ago, right as he was kind of right as he was getting rolling with ONE FC for a piece for Fight Magazine back in the day. But I just remember coming away thinking this guy thinks completely different from most fighters that I've talked to, just in terms of how he carries himself. He's a very principled person. I don't think he gets too bothered by discussion. He likes to kind of play a little bit of the heel, you know what I mean? But he's not too bothered by talks of greatness and stuff. He just, in a black and white sense, he knew how to navigate his career and he knew what he wanted to do. And why not say it just like that? Because if somebody wants to offer him a ton of money to come back and fight and really test himself. And everybody would love to see that. I think at some point they'd like to see that fight. So you're leaving that option open. If somebody wants to pay a lot of money for him to come back and test himself against whoever the champion is at the time, obviously, like, I'm not even sure it would matter to see like Woodley at this point, given the situation that those guys are in. But there may come a time in the next 6 months to a year where there's a champion that's, with the UFC or whoever, and you think, I'd really love to see what would happen to Ben Askren. Well, maybe then that happens. You know what I mean? So I like that it left that open. Just a little caveat that says, if you really want me, come at me correct, and I'll come and fight your best guy, and then that'll be the big proof that everybody's waiting on.
It's almost like the talk for a long time was Fedor. He never fought in the UFC. Do you think that holds any water, that argument? If they haven't competed in the UFC, it doesn't make them world class?
Man, that line of reasoning fluctuates so severely because back in the day there was Pride, and then there was Strikeforce, and these organizations had a ton of talent. Now, when the partition came down and Strikeforce merged essentially over to the UFC, sans Fedor, like all those other guys came over, it started to feel that way. It felt that way for a minute with him because it was like, well, here's everybody else. Now that pool has been integrated, and you're the only guy who's not in that pool to see. But this was on his downfall anyway. Like he'd already just lost to Bigfoot Silva, and Dan Henderson. So you didn't really, at that point, you didn't need to see him fight in the UFC as much because those guys were UFC caliber guys who were still competing in the UFC and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. Like these days, as there's a little bit more of a migration going on toward Bellator, and then Bellator obviously doing a good job bringing up their guys, and I don't know how long that argument can stay in there. At some point, the UFC they're always going to be the big organization, but I don't know if they're going to be the end all where it's like if you don't fight in the UFC, you're nothing. Yeah. I think at some point people will once again, kind of like in the Pride days, you'll separate and say like, I wish we could see that, but this guy's great on his own. He's great where he's at. You know what I mean?
Especially when there's clear political reasons why some guys just don't go to the UFC, co-promotion, all that kind of stuff. We won't hold on to it for too much longer, but we'll have to touch on Henry Cejudo. You did mention in your pre-fight article for The Ringer that maybe Cejudo's a guy we haven't really seen his potential. Is that his potential? Did we see it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, to me, that was what I've been waiting to see, honestly, with that guy. Because everybody knows he can wrestle, but he almost treats it as a default. It's almost like he will default to his wrestling if he needs to. And he didn't. I mean, this fight was just a guy taking it to another guy from bell to bell. And, I mean, it just went right through him, like we were talking about with Rafael dos Anjos. I mean, just seeing him in such a refined form where he was singular-minded and that urgent to get the thing done, to me that was very nice. And also I love the way he handled himself in the post-fight, just basically saying, he's not like, he wasn't like, hey, watch out, Demetrious Johnson. He was like, they had some words, but he was basically like, I know I'll fight him again. It's inevitable. Yeah. And I feel like it is, and that's what you need. You need to set up these guys who are finally coming in there. I think there was a little bit of a consensus that DJ might have caught him still while he was a raw product a little bit, you know what I mean? And so you see him get to this point where you think, okay, now we're seeing the best version of Henry Cejudo. Maybe you've got something, down the line here. And certainly the flyweights need it. You know what I mean? They need to have guys who are going to be able, if DJ is going to hang around, it's got to be one of those situations where you have guys lined up who can challenge him.
That's one thing about the flyweight division. Excuse the pun. It's thin, where you're only a couple of wins away, and if you get a couple of wins, all of a sudden you're fighting Demetrious Johnson again. So Cejudo certainly set it up beautifully.
Looks like it might be. Pettis called him out, and I know he said he wants that fight. It was obviously scheduled before, but they're talking about that for 218 in Detroit in December, which is a great
fight. That'd be a nice fight. I would like to see that fight at this point. To me, that was both guys are at that point, and obviously. There'll be some good eyes on that fight, and I think that you can establish, if you want, you can establish the next contender right there, man. And I'd have no problem with seeing either one of those guys, especially if they have a big showing against the other, you know what I mean, going up against DJ after that.
Chuck, thanks a million for your time. Check out, as always, on MMAFighting.com, The Ringer, and on MMA Beat when you're there as well. I love your work, my man. Keep it up. And thanks a million for joining us here and obviously Fight Talk.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of your day, sir. Take care.
Take care.
There you go. There's expert journalist opinion from one of the best in the business.
Awesome.
Just recapping UFC 215. So it was great to get Chuck's insights. And it's mad, isn't it, I sit watching these podcasts
all
the time.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting looking at the computer, and for a while, a couple of times during that interview, I was just sitting there listening to him, and then I go, oh shit, I'm actually conducting this interview.
I'm participating in this. This is weird.
I'm a part of this.
The funniest thing ever. Absolute funniest thing ever. If we built like an MMA beast set, and then when you come on and seen us, and we were sitting there like just like idiots, that would have been the funniest thing ever.
Yeah. No, Rob.
But no, we don't have the budget for that.
No, don't have the budget. Podcast money. It's raining in podcast money. That's literally it. If you're looking, there's nothing there. There's nothing there.
Fucking squeezing just to say something.
Let's move it along briefly and quickly and happily and triumphantly to the best in the business, Mr. Brendan Dorman. Welcome back to Obviously Fight Talk. If you're watching on your telly, on the YouTube, you'll see him. If you're listening on your wireless radio, you'll about to hear him. We're not saying he's the best. We're just saying there's nobody better. Mr. Brendan Dorman.
Feels good to be on top. Thank you for having me.
So exhausting.
I look forward to the intro every single week.
Yeah.
I'm going to run out of shit at some point, you know.
We can recycle.
Just start making up words.
Yeah.
Totally. Like H.
So UFC Fight Night, let's get right. Reel it in there, gentlemen.
Yeah.
UFC Fight Night goes down this weekend, and it's in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I sound like it's like around Borg there. Pittsburgh? Must be a question mark. Yeah, going down in Pittsburgh. Your main card kicks off in the heavyweight division between Justin Ledet and Asuana Anianu.
Excellent. I don't know if you're right, but
that's
we'll go with that. That's his name now.
That's his name tonight. So clash of the heavyweights. Heavyweight division is really limited the last few years. He's coming off. Anyway, is coming off the Dana White's Contender series.
Yeah, watch that fight.
So he had the big win by knockout on the Contender, and he's getting a shot in the UFC against Justin Ledet. And I'm just going to pull up a technology there, Justin Ledet, because I'm a little behind myself. Who, yes, he did beat Mark Godbeer in his last fight, and he has a victory over Chase Sherman as well.
Yeah, Ledet, I actually think he's very, very good. I think he has a boxing background, as far as I'm aware. I think he fought pro boxing, but he has a very good ground game. Like, did you see the submission against Mark Godbeer? That was beautiful.
Yes.
But he also has a really good boxing game, of course. And interestingly, I think you said the name for me, Annie
Anawa.
That guy.
I'm
going to call him AZ.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to try.
We're going to call him AZ.
His first name is Azuna, so I'm going to call him AZ.
Arizona.
He has a very traditional kind of boxing stance where he's like, really traditional, hands up here. And he's pretty good. He plays well in range. Like he usually pushes his guy up against the cage, slips back and lands counters like overhand rights. But Ledet is very, very good. I've seen him fight at the Mark Godbeer fight. I was watching his highlights today, and his striking's really, really good, and his submission game is really, really good.
One thing that would stand out
as well.
One thing that would stand out for me here is the difference in, like, fair enough, Ledet only has 2 fights in the UFC, but for AZ, the step up here is going to be like it's Grand Canyon gap to the caliber of fighters he's been fighting. So this is a big step up.
Couple of those.
He had a big finish, in fairness to him, in Dana White's Contender. But this is a
beautiful finish as well.
This is a big step up in
Yeah,
class.
definitely a big step up. I like Ledet here. I really do. I like Ledet here.
All I wanted to chirp in with on that one, because I don't really have much for thoughts as far as like a winner, but I talk about this a lot. Well, I used to anyway in breakdowns, like with Dominic Cruz and stuff, is that holding your hands up like this is a lot of work when you have to grapple. If you're very like plotting, that's why sometimes I'll kind of say like I don't like Muay Thai footwork, but that's all I'll ever really knock about Muay Thai. Like I love Muay Thai. Yeah. I think their footwork should be a little slicker. That's all. And that's a super general statement. Obviously there's exceptions to that rule times 10. But a guy at heavyweight, if we ever watch a heavyweight fight and we kind of, get a little disinterested, we'll say, it's because of fatigue every time. Yeah. So let's hope, someone that's a high hands boxer guy knows that when he's got, kickboxing range or more, to kind of, that's when you relax and you can drop to, say, shoulder length. You see some of the best strikers kind of toying with that, even more so now than you used to.
Yeah.
Used to kind of be like Anderson Silva's realm, and then there were just guys that were bad strikers, so that they didn't have their hands up. But, I don't suggest this all the time because hooks still will get through that, in an MMA context. That's why you see, like,
gloves,
turning over of hands a lot because that, we've talked about, like, the padding that's not there.
Yeah.
But anyway, hopefully it's not like that. Hopefully it's, guns a-blazing.
Yeah, even though Leda has a boxing background, he's, like you said, he keeps his hands low. Not all the time, but he keeps his hands low a lot of the time when he's out of range. Whereas the other guy, AZ, doesn't really that much.
The thing about, if you're a betting man here, you're going to look at the gap being too big in class. Or, if you like an underdog, this could be it, especially in the heavyweight division. 4-ounce gloves, these guys are going to be coming in either touching the 265 limit thereabouts.
I'm pretty sure Leda hasn't fought in quite a while as well.
So you never know. That the home run shot could land. But for me, betting man, I'll be picking Leda just like Rob on that one. Your next fight of the evening is now going to get officially murdered by Noel. It's Kamaru Usman taking on Sergio Moraes.
Moraes.
Yeah.
The other guy's Omaru, who's he's like Nigerian American.
Yeah.
He's
the Nigerian nightmare, nonetheless, Brendan Dorman.
Christian Okoye, you mean?
Yes, this guy is. He's the Nigerian nightmare of Kamaru Usman.
He's using that nickname?
Yeah, sir.
Oh, there was a running back in American football.
No wonder that went right over our heads.
Yeah, I was like, shit, am I completely out of the loop here?
Who was that fighter? Was he good?
Yeah.
Was he a boxer?
Yeah, I was getting embarrassed.
Christian Okoye was an American football player, was a monster, and he had that same nickname. Anywho, moving on. The guy in question now was he was with the Black Zillions when I was down in Florida, but he wasn't pro yet.
Okay.
But he was kind of like a wrestling coach, if you will. Like, he wasn't the head grappling coach or anything, but he'd help guys out a lot with wrestling. I think he was like a D2 champion. But he used to work with Tyrone Spong and Rashad and the likes on their, especially when Spong was trying to make the conversion to MMA. He's a really good grappler. And he's got power in his hands. Yeah. I think he's still working with Henry, so he's a dangerous dude.
He competed in the Black Zillions against Top Team Ultimate Fighter.
Oh yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
That's how he landed the contract, no?
Yeah, I think it might have been.
Yeah.
He's a really athletic guy. You got to give it to him. Like he covers a lot of distance. Yeah, absolute freak athlete. Moraes is athletic in himself, but I think if you're looking at the striking here, Usman, although I think his grappling is better, is probably a much better striker than Moraes, who's very wild and he just uses striking to close the distance. Really.
Yeah. Moraes is like, from what I can recall for fights, I got about 3 in my head. He's inconsistent, and he has flashes where I'm like, that guy's got something, to get to the top tier. And I've seen him kind of, I don't want to say boring. That's like the wrong word to use, but just not blowing me away.
Yeah, he has excellent grappling though. Yeah. Excellent with jiu-jitsu.
Oh, well, that's the thing. He's more of like the submission type, whereas, of course, high-level wrestlers pick up submissions pretty quickly, given the context of MMA, especially, no-gi, etc. But Maru's like a control guy. He's kind of like a Khabib light. I don't want to give him that much.
Ground strikes.
Khabib's probably the best ground striker ever. I don't even like that guy. What am I talking about? Anyway, but he's a control dude. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he's going to get top position. He's not going to lose it. Really hard to sweep if you're on the bottom. That'd be kind of actually more interesting to me on the ground to see how that played out.
One thing I did notice about him, and to be honest, it didn't affect him in the fights I've seen. I've seen him go to decision, but in his takedowns, he's so athletic and so strong that he picks guys up and throws them down. And you'd think that maybe over 3 to 5 rounds, maybe that'll play against him. It hasn't so far, but just to point out, maybe
both fighters currently on a great streak as well. Usman's on 11-fight win streak, and Moraes is on a 6-fight win streak.
I'm taking Usman to win.
I'm going to go with Usman.
I usually don't make picks, but I like him to win. I kind of know the guy, so I can root when I can root.
Yeah. I'm going to go Usman just because he knows a guy that I know. So we're best friends. And that worked at the weekend. It worked at the weekend with Latifi. Come on, it worked. Don't question the science. But yeah, science is terrible here. Your next bout of the evening sees Gregor Gillespie taking on Jason Gonzalez.
Before we move on, can your official nickname be Brendan Schlitter Dorman? Please.
Can Can we come up with something else? It sounds terrible.
It's great.
It's great. I'm gonna call my parents. Like, hey, I got a new nickname. Check this out.
It's like a baseball. It's a really hard ball. If you hit somebody with it, it's gonna knock them out.
Do you want to be named after a really hard ball?
No, that's very true.
I can't believe you made.
Yeah, no one cares. No one cares about the balls.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
What?
Okay.
That's a different. That's a different podcast.
Yeah, we'll do that next time.
Yeah, so Gregor Gillespie taking on Jason Gonzalez as your next bout of the evening in the lightweight division. And Rob, I'm going to pass the mic to you because you were excited with this one.
Gregor Gillespie, man, I think he trains with Frankie Edgar. If he doesn't, then he watches a lot of Frankie Edgar. I know he's a New York guy, so I just assume he does. But
yeah, there's a couple guys from New York on this card.
Yeah, man, he is excellent. He is really, really good. He's my one to watch for the year. Definitely my one to watch for this card.
Did you say that at the start of the year?
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know. Possibly. But really, really good striking, and it's very. Why I say Frankie Edgar, it's very similar. You know, to Frankie Edgar's striking style, his boxing style. He's really tight. Lovely jab, lovely technical boxing, and he's just really good everywhere in the striking.
Light on the feet, constant angles,
exactly.
movement. Does he mix it up as much with takedowns?
Yes, mix it up and similar takedowns. He doesn't really do that. I think it's. You can correct me. I'm not up with my wrestling, but I think it's like a knee tap that Frankie does a lot. Is that right?
Yeah, well, Frankie has a couple of takedowns that he does. One's like, I learned it too from the same person that Phil Nurse teaches, which is like the tie sweep, where you frame across the body and kick out the legs. But the one you're talking about, a knee tap would be usually from like an over-under, right? Like a pummeling position, and you drop levels. Like GSP did it against Matt Hughes twice in their third fight, where you drop levels and it's just grabbing them behind the knee and using your momentum forward.
But you
knee picks, ankle picks, that's all they really mean. Or they'll call it a knee tap, which is more like the judo reference, but it's the same principle.
Okay. Well, he has this very, very similar style in that way. Like, he mixes up his wrestling so well. And if you watch his last fight with Andrew Holbrook, oh my God, that knockout. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
The left hook. He dropped. Well, he didn't completely knock him out, but he dropped him with a left hook. And
really, really early.
Yeah, and he came in. He feinted the right hook. Then feinted the left hook, and he almost kind of just looked for range. And then Holbrook came in with a right straight, and then the left hook came around over the top and just absolutely cleaned him
those
onto
are always
the floor.
the ones that are just when one person's coming in and the other one connects at the same time. That's usually a recipe for disaster. I would call like Frankie Edgar and his style similar in that I call them like paper cutter strikers. Like, they're very good against people that tend to wing a lot because they can move lateral, and they'll dart forward. And it's like a pair of scissors through paper, in other words. Like, it's like a kind of a self-defense principle to, like, keep your hands here if someone's throwing round strikes, and then you want to attack straight line.
Yeah.
So you're still, like, your chin's kind of tucked, and you can kind of move forward and chain your takedowns off of that, you know? So that's a good comparison. I don't know if they train together, to be honest. But I see the similarities.
Yeah, he's a NCAA Division I champ as well. So there's that.
Yeah, that means a lot.
Yeah. One thing as well.
I know that's not a thing over there, but over here, that's a big deal.
That's a big one. One thing as well. One thing you brought up, Jason Gonzalez. That's the kind of striker he is. Very loopy. Throws a lot of hooks. Throws a lot of high kicks. So the only thing I will say, he's huge. He's like 6'2" or something, and absolutely enormous versus 5'9" for lightweight. So he's a big guy.
Yeah.
So there's that. But if you watch his fight with Drew Dober, who has similar striking-ish, obviously more of a kickboxer.
I watched that earlier.
Yeah, and man, he flattened him right down the middle.
So he's a wild swinger. The technical guy is going to him off of fundamentals and straight shots.
That's my thought.
90% of the time, that's the case.
Yeah.
It's whoever is in tighter. Yeah. Or like, even if they're both like Rampage, I think I brought this up to you guys before, but Rampage Vanderlei in the UFC when it wasn't, elephant steroids in the ass. Vanderlei went to throw a hook at Rampage and his right hand was like here. Yeah. Like, he didn't cover his ear at all. Yeah. And Rampage threw a beautiful weave and still covered up and came through at the same time. And Vanderlei was asleep for about 25 minutes after that. Yeah. But it was the crispness, like actual boxing technique that got it done. It doesn't always have to be jabs and crosses.
Yeah.
It's about being accurate, and you can be tight with hooks. Like, it's small area still.
Anyway, my biggest Gillespie.
Gillespie. Well, look, I'm not going to disagree with two experts, so I'm going to go with Gillespie as well. I'm a little in the dark. Gillespie's knockout stands me now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, he's a guy, if you remember the knockout, he's a guy you remember.
No, I do.
Yeah.
So I'll go with Gillespie there just through, 9-0. Watches are saying with Frankie Edgar, if he's that style of fighter, he's my type of fighter. So I have to put an asterisk beside his name there and keep an eye out for that
Is
fight.
Frankie getting a title shot, by the way?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, Max Holloway is said he wants it, doesn't he?
Floating.
Yeah.
I'd like it.
That's such a ridiculously awesome fight anyway.
So good.
Yeah, it'd be a great fight. Absolutely stunning.
That's a you take that day off from work.
Yeah.
Kind of fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sticking with this card,
yeah, I know.
A man badly in need of a victory who was really fallen and slipped and slid. It was Hector Lombard, and he has taken on Anthony Smith. What's gone wrong for Hector Lombard? Everybody was calling for Hector to come to the UFC for a long time, thinking he'd just literally come in and they basically hand him the belt. It hasn't gone that way, and he's gone through a hard time with defeats. He's currently on a 3-fight slide. So what happened with Hector Lombard?
When you said what happened with Hector Lombard, literally at the exact same time, if you're watching YouTube, you'll see it. Me and Brendan just went. Just look. You
know what I was looking for was like something to shake, like.
Hey.
Again, I must use the word allegedly. But yeah, is it just all down to USADA? I know it's proven.
My pancakes.
Is it all down to USADA, or is it something else?
It could be. It could. He came when he first came in. It was still the wild, wild west when he fought Boach. At 185, he seemed a little undersized. Then he tried the 170 cut. The loss to Henderson was a little weird.
Yeah.
The loss to Magny, it's like he blew his wad. And then what was the other one? Magny Lombard.
Hendricks.
Magny Henderson. What was the other one?
Johnny Hendricks.
Oh, my favorite guy on earth. I don't know. I can't watch Johnny Hendricks fight.
But for me, looking at this fight, this is a weird fight because he's on a really bad streak, Hector Lombard.
Yeah,
and he's fighting a guy who, in fairness, he's on a 2-fight win streak.
He's on a resurgence,
but he came through the Ultimate Fighter, and he had one fight then on the Johnson card, the Fox 24 card against Andrew Sanchez, where he won his strikes. But if you look at these and you were said Hector Lombard's fighting, who's he fighting? Anthony Smith. You go, oh yeah, Anthony Smith. Yeah. So it's a weird fight. Is this the UFC going to Hector? Go on, have a win, or are they building Smith? Are they going, here's a chance to get a win over somebody who was thought of so highly?
The latter. If I had to guess, here's why. Do you have the tail of the tape in front of you?
I can do. Yes, I do.
Look at the height difference.
6'2", 75-inch reach.
6'2". I've seen him listed as high as like 6'4".
6'2".
He's a
big guy, yeah.
He's a big dude. Either way, Lombard's 5'7". Yeah. I mean, doesn't really matter. 6'2", 6'4". We're talking about like that's so much of a disparity. If he just even remotely knows how to use his length and has remotely decent coaches, he should be able to stay on the outside. Now, Lombard has his freak moments for sure, but again, his gas tank is, like a moped.
Well, I find, I know this is a reference you always say as well, Randall. I find with Lombard, like a video game, he almost holds down the special button to throw the big shot that saps your energy. Yeah. And that's what Hector Lombard does in all his fights, is that he throws to kill, and if one of them shots landed, yes, you're out, you're gone, you're done. But when they don't land and the bell rings and it's time for round 2, he's barely able to lift to get himself up off the stool. I think as well,
Anthony Smith is a very tough guy. If you remember his last fight, he was losing that fight and he came back in the third, wasn't it? Didn't he finish the third?
Yeah.
Came back and won by knockout. So he's a really tough guy. So I think that could be a problem for Lombard. And I think Lombard is in that unfortunate situation where he's too big for one weight class and he's too small for the other. He falls right in that category. And he's on a bad streak. I just can't pick Hector Lombard based on his last couple of performances. I just can't. Smith is on a bit of a resurgence, so I got to go with Smith. I think he's a good striker. I think, as you said, Brendan, he'd be able to keep him on the end of his strikes and at least win a decision. But sometimes he can get into that firefight, and if he does get into the firefight, stand in the pocket with Lombard, that could be a horrible idea. So, But I'm going to go with Smith, but it's a good fight. It's a very interesting fight.
I know we're sort of focusing on striking there, but Hector
Lombard.
Lombard's judo is absolutely phenomenal. The throws and
you almost say that about like Roy Nelson's jiu-jitsu. It's like, Roy Nelson's jiu-jitsu is amazing, but he never uses it. So
Well, look, it could be there.
We've seen it a little bit from Lombard. He's like a 4th degree black belt in judo, and I believe he medaled maybe in the Olympics. I don't know. I'm not sure on that part.
Yeah, he did.
But we saw it against like Jake Shields. We saw it against who's that guy's really high level.
Yeah.
Who else did he throw? He fucking ragdolled somebody. God, I forget who it was.
His last few wins have been Nate Marcotte, Paul Harris. Might have been Paul Harris he threw around, was it?
That Paul Harris win. No, he just knocked him the fuck out. Might have been Mark Bart. I think he might have ragdolled him. He's just got that ability. That's the thing is, you don't get to be an Olympic medalist or a 4th degree judo black belt without technique.
Yeah.
As much as we can shit on the guy and hear all those terrible, he's not allegedly the best teammate from every source I've ever heard, but he has really, really good, takedown technique. On top of that, freakish strength. But it's just like that guy that doesn't breathe in there. It's kind of, and I'll make this a 4-second blip, but it's the Cejudo thing, as to your reference, Noel, about not loading up on everything. It's like take a little off, and you'll find your spot.
Yeah.
Because you telegraph more the more you try to the strikes. You can't, you got to relax in there.
Yeah.
You'll still find your power.
He also kind of his footwork is very stagnant. He also kind of just stands in there and kind of plods forward. Doesn't really cut huge angles. So and with that, with not no reach, but with very, very little reach compared to his opponents, that's going to be a problem. It always is going to be a problem.
Of course. He's just that guy that's almost like someone like Woodley's wide, but he's a little more proportional or proportionate, or I don't know which one works better there. But he makes weight. He has never pissed hot. Lombard has that. I mean, he's pissed hot, so we're not going out on a limb to make insinuations there. But he's like wide. He's super wide, but he's like 5'7". So what do you do with a guy like that? He's just, it's tough. You can't lose muscle mass. You can't lose the width of your shoulders. Yeah. You know what I mean? So who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if he came out and starts the guy either, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think is that I think this could be his last hurrah as well. Possibly, he is 39 years of age. The age is Father Time will never be beaten and all that. So
I'm going Smith.
Yeah, you're going Smith. Decision, or are you going to get him to finish?
I'm going to say.
I don't see it going the distance.
Yeah, I'm going to say he's going to finish him. He's going to finish him by a TKO.
Look, if you want to have fun in the bookies, stick a fiver on Lombard to win knockout in the first round.
Yeah.
I think that's how he wins the fight. If he wins, he gets it done in the first round. If he doesn't, if Anthony Smith does win it, he's going to be beating up an exhausted Hector Lombard on the mat. But I'm gonna go old school. I'm gonna go with Hector Lombard. I'm gonna say Hector Lombard, good pharmacist. He'll get the knockout.
You going with Hector with a H?
Record.
H.
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 Oh boy, we're never gonna settle this. Moving on.
Anyway.
All in love, brother. All in love.
Co-main event is a fun one. I think I really like the co-main event. Thiago Alves taking on Mike fucking asshole Perry. Mike Perry is he's got he knows he's an asshole and he embraces being the asshole. So I like him.
Yeah.
I like Mike Perry. I said it. I picked him. His very first fight in the UFC, Brandon. I picked him. He was only a shadow on the UFC thing. You know the way they don't put up a picture?
Yeah, they can't get their picture up in time.
Yeah. I'm going to pick the shadow because he's won all his fights by knockout. And then he comes out and acts the absolute dick at the weigh-ins. And I was like, why did I pick this guy? And then he wins and I'm like, what a fighter. What a man. I'm team Perry. But he's fighting a very experienced Thiago Alves here. But this is a great fight because the two of them like to trade and throw, and I just think this is a fun fight.
It's so fun.
Brendan,
tell us why it's fun.
Yes. All right, this one I got a lot to say. Oh, well, I'll try to not say too much. I know Thiago from way back. Again, those are both Florida guys.
Yeah.
So when I used to go to ATT, Thiago was there once in a while. He was still injured, but he would still train. He's like one of the nicest guys ever. And I think people forget what a savage he used to be. You know, we saw shades of it against a game Cote in his last fight. It was refreshing. Especially I liked when he got in close that he was using more traditional Thai, like elbows in tight, because that's kind of his background. I still maintain, maybe because I throw my leg kicks this way, but he does the Hoost school of both kicks, actually, where he leads with his knee well. Like, he brings up his leg this way, knee tilts, leg kick comes down. I call it hitching your leg rather than kicking up and, maybe getting Anderson Silva'd by Weidman, that kind of thing. His leg kicks are savage. Now, I could say a million nice things about Alves. We kind of know his career, though. Yeah. On the flip side of that, I don't know Mike Perry, although I know he's from Florida, because he beat, in like his third fight maybe, or his second fight, a kid that I was supposed to be his head coach. His name's James Rodriguez. I was going to coach him in like 2012, whenever it was. And that kid had phenomenal striking. I was like, the whole reason I was excited to coach that kid was because he came from like a boxing pedigree and he was like a really good athlete. Awesome striker, but Perry took a few like bombs, even though James was landing, and he ended up knocking him out. And he also beat a guy who actually owns a gym 3 miles from my house. What the hell is his name? Oh, that's terrible that I'm brain farting on his name. He was on The Ultimate Fighter. I can't think of the kid's name.
Would this have been after Rodriguez or before Rodriguez?
After Brian something. No, what the hell is his name?
Preston, no.
Keep going.
Michael Roberts. John Manley.
John Manley. Thank you. John Manley owns a jiu-jitsu gym up the street. He kind of left a team that I'm glad he did, and I hope they hear me say that. He started his own gym like down the street from my house, pretty much, and he's a super likable dude, kind of a relaxed dude, but he's a masterful jiu-jitsu player, and he got beat by Mike Perry too. So Mike Perry, we've seen in the what was it, Jake Shields was the most recent, I think.
I think it was Ellenberger.
Oh,
I'm sorry. What did I just say?
Jake Shields.
Jake Shields. You said him a minute ago. He's on your mind.
Yeah. Freudian slip, maybe. That was weird. But yeah, so Ellenberger, who's a savvy vet with crazy power and really good wrestling, he knocked him the fuck out too. Yeah. Super interesting fight. Like, just super, super interesting fight. We'll see where Thiago is, right? Because he tried the 155 thing, that didn't pan out. Came back up to 170 and looked really good last time. And Perry's this kind of rising, I don't know, he sounds like he's Creole. He speaks really weird, but he's an interesting cat, It should be an amazing fight.
See, for me, this is one where you've got the upcoming star again. The UFC tend to do this, where they put somebody in to give them the test. Yeah. But Alves was out for a long time. And then he came back, and he's starting to, like you said, he tried, he dropping down, didn't really work. Patrick Cote looked great against, but this is a tough fight against a known knockout. But maybe the technique. But again, Mike Perry has great technique. They're wild, crazy shots he throws, but they're with good technique. He can
kind of get ahead of himself or something, isn't he? Yeah. He gets technical and then he gets ahead of himself.
I just think if Alves can do his defensive work. I like Alves has the sort of bobbing, his nice head movement. He creates nice angles. The kicks you were saying as well, but like his elbows, as I was explaining, his elbows in the last fight were just dirty.
Do you remember Mike Perry's finish?
Filthy.
The elbow.
But that's what I'm saying. This fight, somebody is getting put out.
Yeah,
Someone's
I can't imagine it. Nah.
Somebody's getting the smelling salts underneath. This for me could potentially be like fight of the year,
It
really could be. This could have fireworks. The way this has fight of the year is if they both rock each other and they can both take it. If one guy knocks out the other guy, you're going to go, what are you talking about, fight of the year? It depends if they can take the punishment that the other is shipping out.
And that's how I see my picks going. Like, if it goes into that firefight, I see Perry. And if it doesn't, then I see Alves. Because remember when Mike Perry took on the gorgeous one, Alan Jouban. Alan Jouban kind of gave him a bit of a lesson in that fight. a lesson of range, and he just completely technical fight. Didn't do a huge amount of damage, but he just kept Mike Perry on the end of strikes. I think Alan Jouban's probably a bit longer than Alves, but I can definitely see Alves doing some.
He's tall. He's
tall.
6'2".
He's a big guy. That's why he's a model. But I can definitely see.
He's a handsome prick too.
We have such love for Alan Jouban on the show.
Did you ever see him? Did you ever see him?
Add him on Facebook. I'll have him at you guys.
Did you ever see the Alan Jouban moment on this show?
What's that?
Did you ever see the Alan Jouban moment on this show?
No.
We were breaking down one of his fights
against. Remember the name?
And Rob was Mohammed
Bilal. Yeah.
So we were breaking it down, and Rob was giving his breakdown. We were in a different studio, and so I'm sat here. Rob's there, and one of the lads that used to host with us here, Carl Doran, he's away in a sabbatical at the moment. Carl was sat here, so as Rob was doing the big breakdown, Carl just went and Jouban.
I said, and but the difference between Bilal and Jouban is, and
he just went, yeah, but Jouban is,
and then I was like,
it's froze. Like there was a good 10 seconds of
like nothing.
Gorgeous. And we're like,
that's brilliant.
We're like, yes, he is gorgeous.
Like, where's he going? Where's the story going? That's awesome. That's better than what I said.
But what was great about it was we all stopped to let him say it. So we all looked at him going, and
like a dog with a bone. Like, go
gorgeous. Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, we made a gift. But he is gorgeous, but he backs it up a good fight. And I do agree, in that Mike Perry fight, he really outclassed him with technique and keeping it technical. He didn't get him broad.
Decisive decision victory, correct? I think it was a 3-round unanimous on all cards kind of thing. Yeah, he was just keeping him at length, pointing him in. Alves is more technical. He could do that, but he can't keep him at length per se. Alves is a kind of short-winged guy. He's shorter than me. I think he's about 5'8". I'm like 5'10"-ish, maybe. He's shorter than me when I met him.
Yeah.
But he's a savage, So
he likes a brawl as well.
Younger guy you favor in brawls. I always do.
Exactly.
If it gets real crazy, hectic, street fightish,
yeah.
Like the younger guy's gonna hold up a little bit. Yeah. Even though Thiago's never really been chinny per se. Yeah. Like Condit split him open, but it was like elbows and blood, and it wasn't really like a cause death thing.
Yeah.
So that fight's just awesome on so many levels.
I'm gonna go Perry, assuming that he's learned from that fight, and assuming Alves can't do what Jouban done.
Yeah, unfortunately I'm the same. I love Thiago Alves.
I think it'd be a brawl.
I'm gonna go with Perry. I just think he has that one punch finish. While I think Thiago Alves needs to land. Did I say Diego? Thiago Alves just needs to land.
We're doing well with names today.
And we're having a stormer. But no, I just think he needs to land an accumulation of shots to get the finish. He'd more likely get the TKO rather than the knockout. While Mike Perry is just like he can turn the lights off at any stage.
Yes, sir.
Main event is, I think this is a sleeper. This card obviously has gone under the radar because there's a different fight happening this weekend. But Luke Rockhold takes on Dave Branch in the main event of this one. What's your thoughts on it? We have not seen Luke Rockhold since he got finished and lost his title to Michael Bisping. So he's been away a while. What are we expecting to see on Saturday night, Brendan?
Super interesting fight. Tough. I have a little bit of vested rooting interest with a Renzo Gracie black belt in the fight. Mm-hmm. And obviously in Branch. And here's where it gets tricky, is that Rockhold now trains striking under Henry Hooft. So I got I'm closer to Renzo, so
you have two dogs in a two-dog race.
Yes, that. But Rockhold went from me thinking he was kind of the future of 185 to suddenly going like, does this guy want to fucking fight? Mm-hmm. Like, fight. Yeah. Why aren't you fighting? I don't even know of him being injured or sick, or he looked like disinterested. I think he was like banging, hosts of talk shows or some shit. He was just doing weird shit, but he's so fucking talented. When he beat Weidman, it was like, that's a savage right there. The way that he beat Tim Boetsch was ridiculous. So Rockhold is as talented as they come. He got caught by Bisping, but let's not make it that he just got caught. He lost.
Yeah.
He lost via strategy, via wonderful punching by Bisping. Beautiful MMA boxing. I will never discredit that. That people call that a fluke. That's ridiculous. That said, you guys agree?
Yes.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So with that, Branch is one of those guys, he kind of gassed out a little bit in the third in his last fight, and the crowd hated it. Yeah. I don't know why the hell they have that on the UFC YouTube channel right now as a fight to like showcase the guy. Yeah. Anyway, but he's a Renzo guy, and I'd assume because he's got good hands that are getting better and good kicks, he might have even worked with Phil Nurse and say Mark Henry in the interim. I don't know. He used to do a lot of like privates with Renzo. They were very close. So he has like underrated jiu-jitsu that you don't maybe see enough. In that last fight, like he took that guy down in the third round, and he had some guard passing opportunities that he kind of just let him pass. Yeah. Sometimes grapplers, like we brought up Roy Nelson earlier, guys that have like these black belts in jiu-jitsu, but they start falling in love with the knockout so much they get away from what got them to the dance, and it's really discouraging. And if I'm Renzo, I'm discouraged even. You know, it's not like he's going to be in the corner physically, I don't think, but it's a very, very interesting fight because they strike differently. What Branch has, and I've seen him train enough to know this, is he's got underrated jiu-jitsu that we really haven't seen, but he's got very good reflexes if you watch him fight. Like when he throws a right hand, he'll like pull out. Yeah. You know, like whereas Rockhold's kind of the opposite. He gets too relaxed, and that might have been partially what happened with Bisping is he gets so, you know, like he's I don't know what to compare it to, but it's like he's meditating in the ring. Whereas Branch fights almost as if he's nervous. Of course, he's not. That guy's been through hell and back. But, you know, he's a little more aware, if you will. Yeah. A little more cognizant of what's going on. So you have, on paper, similar styles, but in reality, not similar at all, you know. So it could be like a counter-puncher's fight, you know.
I think a lot of people would probably lean towards Rockhold for obvious reasons.
Of course.
But sometimes like this can happen where you have a guy who, in David Branch, who was a really good fighter, 2-weight world champion in WSOF. I don't think his last fight was really typical of him as a fighter. If that's the only fight you've seen him fight in, I don't think that's typical.
No, not at all.
But I do think that the reasons why you lean towards Luke Rockhold, not just because he's a former champ in the UFC, but he's flashier. He does pretty flashier things. But we've seen so many times where a guy like Luke Rockhold, a flashy guy who a lot of people look at as the future at one time, goes in against a veteran who just does things correctly and can just figure out that style. I suppose you can even say Bisping was similar to that, who went in and just with a really good game plan and got it done. So I could see that happening, but obviously just with Luke Rockhold's just talent, you'd have to feel that Luke Rockhold wins this fight. But, you know, it's a tough one. It's a very tough one to say. It's a weird fight for me because Rockhold hasn't fought in a long time, and you just assume he'd come back and fight, you know, somebody again in the vein of a Luke Rockhold. But so it's a weird fight for me. But I think it's a really, really tough fight for Luke Rockhold because he doesn't gain a huge amount from this one if he wins, just in the fans' eyes.
And those are dangerous fights for anyone, right? Because he's like aiming down or what's punching down they call it. Like comedians say punching down. Like I think Branch is 9? I think he's ranked 9.
It's probably something like that, yeah.
And they're both really big for 185 as far as I think they're both about 6'3". They're rangy, 6'2", lean guys. You know, it's interesting, man. Yeah. But to your point, anyway, Rockhold's got everything to lose, and Branch has everything to gain. Yeah. So you wonder where the motivation is going to be for a guy that could have fought the last. I don't know when the Bisping fight was. It seems like 2 years ago. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was that long, but where have you been, man? You know.
Yeah, it was last summer. It was June of last year. Okay. For me, with Rockhold, I think a couple of things happened in the Bisping fight. Number one, he beat Bisping pretty convincingly the first time round. So when he got the fight on short notice, he thought, sure, look, I'll just turn up and do the exact same thing. And a big thing was mentioned in the lead up to that fight. I can't remember if it was Dan Hardy doing the breakdown, but he was talking about keeping your foot on the outside of your opponent, the way Luke Rockhold was doing it in the first fight. But in the second fight, he was allowing Bisping to take that advantage to land the extra shot. I just think in some ways he underestimated Michael Bisping because he had done it and beat him before. But I think credit, as you said, has to go to Bisping. He came in with a phenomenal game plan and great approach. And he firmly believed I was winning this fight. And I just think Rockhold I just have to turn up to win this fight. Hopefully he's learned that, because I think the general consensus to this one is similar. Rockhold just has to turn up to beat Dave Branch here. And if he comes in with that attitude, the result could end up the very same thing. I think he'll have learned from it. And I think, yes, he's been away a long time, but He was probably bagging models, as you said, but he was probably doing a lot of training in the interim too.
Good on him.
Yeah, but I'm expecting to see an improved Luke Rockhold here, and if that's the case, an improved Luke Rockhold with a point to prove is a very, very dangerous Luke Rockhold. So I'm going to pick Luke Rockhold here by finish.
Same.
Sorry, Bren, I know your man is there, but I'm going to go Luke Rockhold to get the finish here. In this one.
I don't root like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't. There's very few, unless I know someone actually personally well. I'm not that invested. I wanted to nerd out for a minute. You talked about Dan Hardy, who I have tremendous respect for, and disclaimer, but I really do. I actually like that guy a lot, and he's very intelligent. That left foot, right foot thing, that open stance is a little overstated. It's one of those like trendy things to know. Like, foot outside, dominant position. I mean, it's not as though I don't cover in breakdowns. It is a real thing, but there's ways to manipulate that. And it would take me a half hour to completely explain it, but I'll bring him up again. Watch Roy Jones fight southpaws. He doesn't play that game as much. So you can actually do a lot of damage. I mean, with leg kicks especially, you can start tricking people as to where you're going to put your front foot. And that's from southpaw or orthodox. Doesn't matter. If you start using your lead leg to kick theirs, because you don't need to tell. It's not a round kick from the rear. It's not your front leg kicking a front leg. So you don't have to tell with much. So a lot of times, your right straight is one of your best weapons as an orthodox against a southpaw. That's well known. That's not a trick. As is an arching left, right? Like a 3-2. You also can throw off of both of those strikes. You can chain that front leg left lead into their right lead leg. Is that too much? Am I over-explaining it?
No.
I'm trying to make it just like layman make sense. But the point is that like the whole foot outside, inside, whatever thing, like there's so much more to that. And I feel like at this level of those two guys, like you could play, one of those could fall into a trap of trying to, play the position game, and then the other one drastically breaks the other way, leaving the other guy open. You don't want to fall in a trap of like, this is how you stand when you fight a lefty. Like the rules aren't that, in MMA especially, they're not that concrete. And Dan Hardy's excellent and a brilliant analyst. So it's nothing against him. I just want to give people, or let people know there are alternatives to just fending to get outside or whatever, Anywho, I had to nerd out a second.
We all tie our shoelaces differently.
Yeah. Beautiful, Rob. So that's UFC fight. That's UFC Fight Night 116 going down on Saturday night. Do you know what? There is another card going on that night. There's a great boxing match. More than likely we'll cover that beforehand as well. But check out the MMA. MMA podcast. Watch MMA. Tune in for the main event. If the gods work in that way, sometimes the gods do. The fighting will be over. You'll turn off, and the boxers will be only walking to the ring. And let's be honest, it's the main event you watch the boxing for. Any fight could be an absolute humdinger on this card. So tune in to UFC Fight Night 116.
Humdinger? What, you're from the 1940s?
Humdinger. But Brendan Dorman, as always, has been an absolute pleasure. We got that brain of yours. It's a beautiful brain.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
it's no big deal.
Yeah. I'm kind of a big deal, don't you know? But yeah, Brendan, absolute shout out as well. Go and check out on YouTube. Just type in Brendan Dorman. Just do it. Why haven't you done it already? Hit subscribe and watch all the great breakdowns. And then, of course, hear them here every week on Obviously Fight Talk. So when you like and subscribe on Brendan Dorman, then jump over to Obviously Fight Talk.
It'll make more sense if you listen to this now. Like here first, because you're on the page, and then
whatever, Rob. It doesn't matter the way they do it, Rob. Stop being so OCD. But Brendan, an absolute pleasure as always, my man. And talk to you soon, amigo.
Likewise. See you guys.
Cheers, man.
Gentlemen.
Cheers.
I love his outros and his intros. Absolutely fantastic. We are pushing for time. You won't notice because it's recorded and you're thinking, so what? But we are pushing for time. So let's get on. Decky Larkin. It's pro MMA fighter to referee. You'll have seen him on the big stage now in the likes of your Obamas, your ACB. So let's get on the phone, the Skype phone with a video, to Decky Larkin. So welcome back to Obviously Fight Talk, and if you're watching on YouTube you will see, and if you're listening on audio you're about to find out, we are now joined by Decky Larkin. Decky might look familiar to a lot of you if you were attending BAMA in Dublin, if you were attending ACB, if you attend the likes of Clan Wars, Chaos, all these shows. You might recognise him from being the man in the middle. If you're an old school fight fan, you might have been at his fight. So welcome along to obviously Fight Talk, Decky Larkin.
Thank you very much, guys. Pleasure to be on the show for you.
And he's this man is always nagging me. When you get me on the show? When you get me on the show? And here we are. Deck, just let's start in a way. Let's go all the way back. What got you into MMA? What was the first insight into MMA that got you hooked?
Well, we're going back quite a few years now. You're talking probably 14 to 15 years now. We're going back, and it was Aidan Martin who got me involved. Everybody probably knows Aidan Martin, like he's old school as well. And I just happened to be talking to him, and he says he done a bit of training, whatever. So he says, "Come along." So first night I went, and that was it. Never looked back since.
Had you been watching it before that? Have you been watching it on like videotapes or anything like that, or just that's how long it is? That's how long ago it was, Rob.
No, I hadn't seen it. I knew nothing about MMA back then. It was just Aidan had told me then what it was, and I was like, I'll give it a crack, So, and that's what I did, and
so
here we are.
So you went to the gym. You went in. You got hooked on it. What was the stage? How long were you training before you stepped in there for your first fight?
I was training. The way it happened was Aidan was training at EFR, and that was his main gym. But he also trained in Microfield in just a garage. It was just a setup, 4 or 5 guys, just going in and basically beat the shit out of each other, So, and I was just threw on the deep end along with them guys. I trained one night a week, for probably got to 6 months, and that was only one night a week. And then I moved over to EFR, then went to regular classes, M80 and stuff like that. And I would say probably another couple of months then I was training in EFR, and I ended up got a fight then and just went in. I think it was just a last minute thing. I fought the guy who was 10-2, and it was my debut, and I beat him by guillotine in the first round. So
when you first stepped into the gym, was your intention always to fight, or was it more of this stuff is interesting, I'd like to learn it for self-defense or whatever?
In the back of my mind, I was like, of course I want to fight. So what's the point in training and doing all that if you're not going to show it, So I knew like some stage I will fight, but I didn't fight until either Aidan or coach that says you could fight, like so. So I didn't do anything until then.
From your fighting career, what's the biggest standout moment for you, Decky? What's the one moment that when you think your fighting career, what's the one that springs to mind?
Probably one of my first pro titles, which was a big moment for me, because I would say probably 8 of my pro fights was probably all for titles, and it just didn't happen. And then just I got that one, and then that was it. So I would say that would probably be my highlight for my pro career.
So your career wrapped up, and I'm right in saying you were actually refereeing as you were still an active fighter, correct?
Oh yeah, that's basically just the love for the sport, whether it was being at the shows, working backstage, reffing, fighting. Either way, it was just the love for the sport I had, and I just wanted to be involved either way. Just to be at the show and just watch fights.
That's the best thing about being involved, and it was the best seat in the house. But again, so when you got into refereeing, then was the aspirations then to move on, because I know as well, like when I was going to shows when you were the referee, there was a lot of times Rhys McKee, who is obviously an active fighter now, was with you, and it was almost like he was serving his apprenticeship under you as a referee. And even at Clan Wars last Saturday, you were like the senior referee and the senior official cage side. But when did the refereeing become the target? Like, you're now working on a lot of shows here in Ireland, but you're now as well branching out to the likes of working on ACB, working on BAMA. Have you got the KSW nod yet? But when did referee become the target where, this is where I can continue my career in mixed martial arts on the stage and in the cage?
I knew probably again, Eddie Martin got me involved in refereeing, because he back then, he was the main referee, for Irish MMA, and so I went and done a show along with him. I think my first show was actually Clan Wars. One of the Clan Wars shows was the very first one I done, and I ref like a few. Used to be back then like D-class rules or something silly back then. No headshots standing, no headshots in the ground. So I kind of went from then, and then I done like grappling tournaments, like just in-house, just reffing, overseeing fights and stuff like that. And then kind of moved on. Then I went to Cage Contender. Was kind of the biggest show back then whenever Cage Contender was running. So it was a privilege then to get the shout to go and ref along with the likes of Dave Jones, Peter Lavery, Ian Martin. So that was kind of the main four in the whole of Ireland. That was reffing. But I kind of knew as my pro career started to slow down, and then I stepped up more reffing, like all the shows in Ireland. Like maybe I was doing 2 shows every weekend, or a weekend. It was maybe a Saturday, I'd maybe be in Waterford or Dublin or somewhere, and then I'd be up the road and I'd be maybe reffing EFR or like the Clan Wars on a Sunday or something. So at one stage there, I was like the main guy, the main ref that was on nearly every show. Well, then that's when it just took off then, and so then my pro career just kind of slowed down a wee bit.
And what do you think of the evolution? Because you will have seen it firsthand, like you were involved in mixed martial arts here in Ireland from really the get-go when it really started, really. So from you, what's the evolution like now to when you attend, like even when you attended BAMA in the 3 Arena or the Clan Wars last weekend, when you attend these shows, the difference is just it's chalk and cheese at this stage now. So from your perspective, what your growth of the sport, what's it been through your eyes?
It's absolutely phenomenal. The difference from back, we'll go 14 years, back, maybe at my first fight. Compare them to now, it's like it changed the world. It's totally different. You're fighting in a small hall, like the back of a restaurant or something like that, and maybe 100 people. To now you're fighting in arenas with maybe 10,000-12,000 people, or the likes of KSW at nearly 50,000, was it? Look at the difference from now to then. Even at the weekend there, I was in Kazakhstan, and for a place that nobody really knows, MMA, like that arena held probably close to 10,000, and it was sold out. Jeez. So, and that's just like a small ACB show. It was absolutely unreal.
The sport has evolved of leaps and bounds, and this is something I always want to know: is the referee, when you're in there, like when it's a great fight, are you loving it? When it's happening, are you in there going, oh, come on, you know what I mean? Do you, especially coming from being a retired fighter, do you see the shots in a way and you almost feel like going, throw the left head kick, you know what I mean? But from the referee's standpoint, obviously the best position in the whole house to watch a fight. As the referee though, how enjoyable it is when you're refereeing such a high class fight?
But if you notice the next time you're MCing and I'm refereeing and we have a real belter fight, you'll kind of notice after every round, I kind of like you'll know then that's I really enjoyed that fight, or I've really enjoyed that round or whatever, and I'm kind of hoping it doesn't finish, that you want to just watch more of it, so I'll let you keep an eye on me the next day.
I'll call it.
See for yourself.
The one thing, I don't know if you watched the video back, but there was one of the fights last week where the fighters, whatever happened, they ended up almost on top of you, but you done a beautiful sidestep, and myself and Johnny went, Larkin still got it. He still got the foot movement.
Well, as I was saying, my missus wanted to do breakdancing lessons, so to get a move a bit quicker, get the hips moving. But no, it happens. Maybe just the change in direction in the fight or something. You have to step out of the road a bit quicker. Instead of just trying to shuffle to the side, you just maybe sometimes we push the foot off the cage or something like that. And you get out of the road a bit quicker. Because that's the last thing you want is two big sweaty guys lying on top of you. So. Well,
I'm sure there's some people who wouldn't mind that, but anyway, we cater for everybody here at Obviously Fight Talk. What is next though, Dave? What is the plan? I know obviously myself and yourself were great fans of a hashtag a couple of years ago with Ireland's #1. Get me on the show. You're getting on the shows now, so is it a matter of just building up the portfolio and the CV before? Obviously, the big call is, we're working with Bama there now in affiliation a lot with Bellator, so there'll be that scene. But let's be honest, the real goal is the UFC. Do you have a path to that? Is that the ambitions realistically? Is that what you're chasing?
Well, it's getting the break. It's basically getting on more of the bigger European shows and reffing. So with the likes of maybe Dana White or whoever sees, I'm reffing and I'm a good ref. So it's basically just I just keep my head down. If I get the call, I'll get the call. If not, I actually have a contact with the UFC. So I spoke to him the last time they were in Belfast, and he says whenever we come over again, I'll give you a shout. So it's basically just a waiting game, and I'll just keep my head down and get on the bigger European shows and get the videos out there that everybody likes to see, and they'll maybe see then the guy in the middle has done a good job, so I might get the call for it.
And what's up next for you, Decky? What's your next bit of duty?
Oh well, this weekend I'm in London, Wembley, for Bama. I was pretty excited to go over to this one because it's pretty good card. Yeah. So I'm over there. I'm not actually reffing. I'm part of the commission team, but listen, being involved in MMA, whether it be commissioner, a judge, timekeeper, whatever, or reffing, that's what I like. I don't mind if I don't ref or somebody higher is reffing before I get the call. But certainly, whenever they come to Ireland, definitely I'll be reffing in 3 Arena again. So and then the week after I'm in Sheffield then for ACB.
Nice, that's a great card as well.
Super card.
So I've actually quite a busy last quarter here. There's ACB's pretty stacked. I don't know where but the likes of Canada coming up. They have Dubai, Sweden, and Australia at the end of December as well. So it's a pretty busy time before Christmas.
That's you're getting to travel the world doing something you love. It's everyone's dream, isn't it? You never work a day in your life and you love what you do. Decky, it's been an absolute pleasure, my man, catching up with you. This is Rob's first time really chatting with you, so we tend to burn the ears off one another at shows, but great to have you on the show finally. And if KSW are looking for one of the best in the business, hit him up on Twitter at
Deg Larkin MMA.
That's simple. Deg Larkin MMA. It's easily done. But you should be on. In fairness, KSW, hopefully they do what Bama do, where they use local commissions. They use local, obviously local fighters, but they use the local people to do it. And you definitely should be getting the call, as you're one of the best in the business here, my man. But thanks a million, Dave, for coming on, and pleasure chatting to you. And see you at the show soon, my man.
No problem, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
Cheers, mate. Take care. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. Dick Larkin. You will see him at BAMA. You will see him at ACB. You'll see his face everywhere. And if you've been watching the Fight Store media videos of Clan Wars, you will have seen him as well. Top referee. All around good guy as well. Yeah, nice guy. And he might get off me back now about coming on the show. But yeah, there you have it. So there we have it indeed, Rob.
There we have it indeed, Rob.
Big show. I enjoyed that. Like I said earlier, it was weird looking at Chuck, because I felt like I was watching MMA Beat or something, so I tend to just sit there and listen.
I'd say there's moments where you're just like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm in this, yeah.
But a big shout out to Decky Larkin, to Chuck Mindenhall as well, and to Brendan Dorman.
That was really fun.
Yeah, a really enjoyable one. There's good fights this weekend, both boxing and MMA. Recommend you to check them out. Both of them. You'll have to watch them all. You will. Just legally download one of them the next day. Sorted. But a big shout out as always to Fight Store Ireland, the fighter's choice, everything you need under two roofs. Check them out. Send them the lads from obviously Fight Talk. Sent you MMAmix.com. They're obviously good because they're with obviously Fight Talk. Always great content on their social media and the website itself. And then feelsupreme.co.uk. Receive 10% off all products from Feel Supreme website using our code Fight Talk at the checkout. Visit www.feelsupreme.co.uk for CBD oil and many organic and natural supplements and whole foods. People, get on this. Their stuff is legit. It's their fault, Rob. We don't push them enough. Yeah. But no, a big shout out to all our sponsors. But yeah, great guests. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the fights this weekend. I will watch the boxing fight, but I'll be watching the MMA first. And if it happens that boxing is still on when the MMA is over, I sound like one of the boxing analysts. You have noticed that they all kept calling it the MMA.
The MMA, yeah.
The
it's
MMA.
Like the Facebook or the Twitter. Yeah. Quick one. Not going to say who we probably have next week, but if you are interested in prospects in both MMA and boxing, not the same guy, two people, but guy, there's a clue. We have two of the biggest prospects, I believe, next week.
Both of them scheduled to fight very soon as well.
Unless something happens and, schedules. But if not, have a guess down in the comments. Go on, give it a go.
Beautiful.
Boxing MMA.
I'm excited by it. No more clues, that's it?
Yes.
Two.
Okay, wait. One more clue. They're not from the States. They're from Europe.
Oh, they're European. They're two of the hottest prospects in their respective sports. They're both matched. Fun times, but that's next week. Hopefully it doesn't fall through, because then we look like ticks. But this has been...
Nobody watches the outro.
This has been episode 80. I've been Noel O'Keefe. He's been Robert Palin. You've been you. You're beautiful. Peace. Gadoosh.